CPAS paper was kind of a normative paper too, correct? But it was applied, or you could classify that thing as a case paper. But the case with IT background, which is kind of complicated, difficult to classify that paper. I wonder if I go in our database, how did we classify my own paper? I had a PhD student doing it, so I didn't do the classification. I would be curious to find out. Actually, we should get the taxonomy database from Wiki, as it is now, so they can have a look at it. Okay, but it'd be interesting to classify this. I feel that I didn't discuss enough this internal audit issue, because it came out a couple more things. Okay, the issue that you raised was an issue about these are separate systems. That was what you started saying, and say they are separate systems. The auditor has a technology system, and now we're proposing the company have a continuous auditing system, typically used, and then the user was undefined. It could be used by external auditor, or could be relied by internal auditor, or could be relied by external auditor. Our experience with Siemens was that when they did the audit of the CCM audit there with a firm in St. Louis, with a part of Siemens in St. Louis, KPMG basically decided to rely on what the internal auditors did. They just asked the internal auditor what they did, and they were even interested in participating. But this whole question about external audit tooling and the internal audit tooling is a very interesting question. And the next thing that actually you approach it is that the information needs of these guys are very different. But it would be nice if these systems were articulated. Wasn't it nice if the auditor could come in, plug in his computer into the internal continuous auditing system, pull up all the exceptions, see if the exceptions have been filled out. There's a paper to be written there, by the way. One of you might want to write a paper. And nothing that I know has been published in articulating technologies between external auditor and internal auditor leveraging. It's kind of interesting technological paper for some of my AIS students here. Okay, I have only around 10 more minutes. Any other issues here that haven't been discussed? I'm not trying to snuff discussion. I want you to kind of tell me if you found something else. Yeah.
I personally think it's a dilemma for the independence and privacy. For example, if the continuous auditor have cover everything, it's independent, but they will lose privacy for the whole.
So this actually, there was a discussion here a little bit earlier about privacy and managerial, and then what we went in that discussion went in the direction of do the external and internal auditors interested in finding fraud? Yeah.
Well, just adding to what Jan said a little earlier about litigation risk, the standards now, they ask the auditors to provide reasonable assurance. So if the external auditor has access to 100% of the data, and they have to issue a restatement if there's a significant loss the company incurs, and that's a big litigation risk for the external auditor.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a question of a litigation risk. Actually, the question that I thought Andrea called that is more interesting at this moment is the question on our IASB presentation. Is you go in there and instead of examining 50 samples, okay, 50 events, you pull the 750,000 examples that they have of three-way match, and then you find 35,000 of them with some variant. And then the question is, what is your obligation as an auditor? And maybe this answers the question you asked before, is maybe auditors haven't done this, external auditors, because they don't want to find the 35,000, because according to the current PCAOB rules, they might be required to follow up every single one of them. And they'll go bankrupt in a fixed audit fee type of event. So maybe there is another reason why external auditors haven't adopted more technology. That's not too good, huh? I'm sure we can come up with arguments in the other direction. Anything else? Yeah.
Can you give some examples of continuous assurance now? Like currently, are there any companies use it?
Not too many, no. The companies keep this pretty quiet.
Okay.
Okay, they don't like very much. We did a study, Siripan, before she left back to Thailand. We sponsored by KPMG, where we examined in depth 9 companies that we thought that might be doing continuous audit. So it wasn't a random study, but was more selective study to look deeper. And even these leading companies, we didn't find a lot of continuous audit there being performed. But when PwC ran a survey of internal auditors, they found that something like 60% of the companies said that they were doing continuous auditing. But what we found is that no one was doing continuous auditing, really. And so obviously those two results are at play. And we think that the companies say, I'm doing continuous auditing. When they do an audit, they find problems, so they come back 3 months later, 6 months later, and examine it again. And I just recently started hearing companies that claim that they are doing continuous auditing and audit by exception. Say that if they don't get a lot of alarms in a cycle or in a system, they don't go and perform an audit. They use that as a risk assessment device and use the errors pulled out by the audit by exception as a proxy for the risk of that particular engagement. But I started hearing more and more. I heard, for example, that Hewlett-Packard is doing that. People at Itaú think that they are doing that, just as too. But it was very interesting. We did this study with Siripan, and it was because KPMG for many years just funded our car lab. And about 4 or 5 years ago, they said, we don't want to just fund you, we want to sponsor your projects. And so we finished up with 3 projects. One, future of audit project. The other one, internal, basically was a survey of what internal audit organizations are doing, which is the one I just described. And the third one, looking at the engagements at KPMG and finding out how much technology they were using. And we found that the engagements at KPMG are not doing a lot of technology. And in my experience with the other firms, that's symptomatic. None of them is doing a lot of technology. They do what Kristen was describing here. They use a spreadsheet instead of doing it by hand. And then they have a tool that makes the working papers easier to prepare. But expecting them to be real-time monitoring a client, not a chance. And the client won't want to be constantly monitored and probably fire them if they do that. Yeah.
Actually, just a quick question going on that point in terms of how much monitoring they're doing. I was just curious, has there been any research in terms of not the full-on continuous monitoring, but just in terms of like the percentage of firms or which type of firms even allow auditors access to their databases? Because I know on some clients you actually can log in on the audit. Even if it's read-only access, they allow you to sit there and enter their system in a read-only basis, whereas other...
waiting for you to do it. The reason we didn't do it is that I'm not a very good surveyor, and I don't like to do surveys. But it's a very reasonable study, easy published too. Easy published, fast published. Someone wants a fast publication, that's the thing to do. I can get you some entry in some firms, both external and internal audit. But you know, it's always at the beginning of a research stage in academia, people do a lot of surveys, finding out what people are doing. And if you look at the IIA and the ISAC and etc., they fund a lot of surveys, Center for Audit Parity, etc. And it will be a very interesting question. And, you know, sometimes the question is more interesting than the answer. And I think her question was very interesting because she was asking this question about, was really about monitoring, the question that you were asking, the way I interpreted it. And you talk about external access, but also if you have external access to look at audit issue, the company must have the tools to be able to monitor it, or you can't really pick up the data. And I, for example, at Itaú, which I've seen a lot of different things they do internally, I think certain areas have very live systems. They have a credit card monitoring, they call it telemetria system, that is an envy to, I think, many, many places. But there are other areas that they have the purchase to pay cycle that was close to manual. One guy approving 60% of the transactions, okay, and originating some of them. And so it's a whole mix of, even, you know, you can't talk, we are surveying companies. You finish off surveying little pieces of companies because the companies are very different inside. And, you know, one of these companies, which are multi-billion companies, are 10 businesses, 20 businesses, 50 businesses. They are not one monolithic company. Not even Google is a monolithic company. Google have hundreds of companies inside of it and has one the search advertising business is a very big business that they have in there. So this is interesting question that you're asking. And I think a survey of looking at what companies monitoring, how much auditors could get out of it, and how much they actually get out of it. Very interesting study. Except that it's a survey, and surveys, have you ever conducted a survey? It's a pain. Pain. Yeah. Or focus groups and other things, that's a major pain. You know, the stuff we do is, in one sense, for me, more interesting because you think big ideas and argue for it. But you're not going out and traveling around the country interviewing people. Okay, I don't like a lot also remote interviews that you don't see. I really don't like very much the electronic surveys. We did this electronic survey. Were you in that paper, Chow? The one the Stanley is doing? Yeah, and we basically, what we did, we agreed with Caseware and used the client base to find out what analytics they are doing. There's a big need to understand what analytics companies are using in CPA firms. And we got a response rate. Stanley thinks it's okay. I think a 5% response rate, even 5%, it's very low. And of course, there is this whole bias here about you are asking Caseware, which is a vendor of software, and so the people that respond tend to be the clients of Caseware. And is that representative of generic population of audit and how much they're using? No. We need to go to the IIA and get them to answer. And when they see the word computer in the questionnaire, their eyes will blank up and they are fainting. They're going to faint. So we are not going to get a lot out of that. I need to stop here, but I want to ask you one question to make you think for a second on something else. Do you already have an idea of what you're going to do for projects? Can we go this way here? Any idea?
For the project for this semester?
Yes.
I want to do something related to the visualization, as you told me.
Okay, visualization, okay.
The contract tax mining project?
Yes, that's my man.
Actually, I'm interested in each topic of the slide, but
yes.
I will choose we will choose audit quality and accounting quality, something like that.
This is, we say we, so this is the team. Okay?
Not yet, but actually I have a question. Does it have to be like continuous auditing, or can it be just auditing in general?
This is an auditing class, it's not a continuous auditing
Just
class.
making sure.
Have you thought of it? This young lady here needs a partner, and I suggested him, but anyone that want. You're probably not doing a project, and you're not doing a project. So you guys are doing the
visualization.
The visualization with the vocal lines, correct? And how many are? 1, 2, 3, 4, is that it? So we divide you in 2 groups to do different things, and I'm going to ask Chow Chow to help you guys contacting the Vocal Foundation, okay? And the person to contact, before you contact Vocal Foundation, talk to Denise, she's already in their list, and she will give them a call and organize. I want 2 teams to already start talking to them, okay? Because this is going to be more hands-on, and because it's going to be hands-on, you guys better get moving. And again, I remember what I said about this project. I don't want you to be preparing a lot of data. I want you to get the sample what they have and work on top of that. And you are going to provide the brains on what public administration and accounting needs. Okay, and you can help the other group, it's not forbidden. Okay, if at the end finishes up that you are very complementary, is one project. But I would rather have you divide because it's difficult for people to work together easily. What do you have in mind?
I and Ke-Shing, we are a team, and we have several ideas that we need to think more about it. Maybe we will send you an email.
Send me an email,
yeah,
and use her as a
CC?
thinking board.
Okay.
Chow Chow.
Okay, I will definitely do
Because
that.
she's seen a lot of other projects, etc. She's been here now. She's an old lady, has been here for more than a year. So, okay, so what are you thinking?
I'm working with Yehuda, so we're still
With whom?
Yehuda.
Oh, the two. Oh, this is the team.
Yeah.
Okay, thinking, and we know. Okay, good. So you guys know what each other are doing to a certain degree here. Okay, if I come up with something, some other idea for project, I'll send an email to everyone. Okay, so I'll see you next Tuesday.